Greetings, llamas. Welcome back to another Music Theory Bite. This video is about key signatures, how to write them and how to read them. If that's something that you need work on and you'd like to know more about, then keep watching. First of all, what is a key signature? Well, at its basic level, it's a collection of accidentals at the beginning of each line of music that tells the performer what notes to play. At a deeper level, it's an indication of transposition, or establishment of a tonal center that requires accidentals in order to make the scale sound correct. So why do we have them? Well, quite simply, some instruments and voices sound better in different ranges. Many musicians, however, also believe that certain keys carry specific meanings or affectations. For example, if we want a triumphant piece, oftentimes we would write that in the key of D major. If we want a more calm piece that represents a pastoral setting, typically a composer would use the key of F major. That's a tradition going back centuries that many composers still follow today. Before we begin, there's something we need to learn, and that is the order of sharps and flats. Accidentals in a key signature always appear in a specific order in tonal music, and they are always placed in a specific pattern on the staff immediately after the clef. Why? Ease of reading. Most musicians, when we're reading, just glance at key signatures. If everything looks like it's in the right place, then we have a pretty good sense of what notes we need to play. If something looks wrong, however, then we need to stop, slow down, and that takes time. And in music, time is a very valuable resource. Let's begin by talking about the order and placement of sharps in a key signature. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is that no matter what staff we're using, the configuration of the sharps appears the same with the exception of the tenor staff, which always looks a little bit different. So when we start, the first sharp is always an F sharp, and it's placed on the respective lines on the staff that you see right now. After that, the second sharp is always a C sharp, and we go down to write that C sharp except on the tenor staff. Next we go up to write a G sharp, and then down to write a D sharp. You might think we would follow the pattern and go up to write an A sharp, but there's a prohibition about using ledger lines in key signatures. And since we wouldn't have space to put the A sharp on the treble staff without using a ledger line, we instead go down to place the A sharp. After that, we continue the pattern of up to E sharp, then down to B sharp. Now you might want to use a mnemonic device to help memorize this. One of the ones that I like to use is fat cats go down alleys easily backwards. I'm sure you've heard other ones that work just as well, and if you'd like, please share yours, as long as it's clean, in the comments below. Now let's talk about the order and placement of flats. Again, it's the same configuration. This time the tenor clef plays along with everyone else and has the same configuration. So we start by writing a B flat, we move up to E flat, down to A flat, up to D flat, down to G flat, up to C flat, and then down to F flat. Again, using a mnemonic device would help you memorize these, or you could do what I do and just memorize them as the order of sharps backwards. F, C, G, D, A, E, B, turned around becomes B, E, A, D, G, C, F. Now that we know how to write the accidentals in a key signature in the correct order and with the correct placement, let's talk about how we actually write one of these. I'm going to show you 5 techniques. Each of these techniques has its advantages and disadvantages, and I happen to like the 5th one the best, but you could use any one of these. So the first technique that we're going to use is to derive the key signature from our knowledge of scales. We can begin by writing out a major or a natural minor scale, because key signatures in the minor mode are always based on the natural minor form of the scale. Major scales, of course, have an interval pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So if we were to write our scale in D major, D to E is a whole step, E to F sharp is a whole step, F sharp to G is our half step, G to A is a whole step. We have another whole step from A to B, another whole step from B to C sharp, and then another half step from C sharp to D, and that gets us back to the key note. Minor scales have a pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Remember that we always use the natural form of the minor scale for this. So in F minor, we start out with a whole step, F to G, a half step, which would make the next note A flat, a whole step, B flat, a whole step, C, a half step to D flat, a whole step to E flat, and then the final whole step takes us back to the key note F. Once you have the scale written, as long as the scale is correct, then all you need to do is pull out all those accidentals and place them in the key signature in the correct order using your order of flats or sharps. That's your key signature. It's that simple. This is useful for writing key signatures, but it's not so useful when you're trying to interpret a key signature and figure out what key you're in from that. The second method we're going to learn is what I call the last accidental method, and this is useful for both reading and writing key signatures. It's based on the idea that the last accidental of a key signature is consistent in that it represents the same scale degree depending on whether we're in a major key or a minor key, and whether we're dealing with a flat key signature or a sharp key signature. So we have 4 different things that we need to memorize to use this technique. What we first need to do is figure out what this final accidental represents, what scale degree it represents. And then what we can do is write the accidentals in order until we reach this pitch. The note you need to figure out is different depending on whether you are using a sharp key or a flat key, and whether the key is in major or minor. So let's start by talking about major keys that use sharps in the key signature. The last accidental in the key signature is going to be the leading tone. It is always the leading tone, or scale degree 7. So, for example, in this key signature with 3 sharps, the last sharp is G sharp, which represents the leading tone in a particular major key. All I have to do is go up a half step to the pitch A, and that tells me the key note, the tonic of the key. 3 sharps go along with the key signature for A major. Going the other way, if I have the key signature of F sharp major, or I want to write the key signature for F sharp major, what I need to do first is figure out the leading tone of that key. F sharp is the name of the key, or the tonic, and I go down a half step to E sharp. What I can then do is write the sharps in order until I reach E sharp. So I'd start with F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp. There's my leading tone. I count the number of sharps. I have 6 of them. That's the key signature for F sharp major. When dealing with minor keys that use sharps, the last sharp is always the supertonic or scale degree 2. So for example, in this key signature where I have 1 sharp, I know that that represents scale degree 2. F sharp is scale degree 2. I go down a whole step from that F sharp, and that will be the tonic pitch, the key note. A whole step below F sharp is E. 1 sharp represents the key of E minor. Going the other way, if I wanted to write the key signature for C sharp minor, my last sharp is going to be scale degree 2. Scale degree 2 in the key of C sharp minor, a whole step above C sharp will be D sharp. So I will write my sharps in order until I reach D sharp. So I start F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. 4 sharps is the key signature for C sharp minor. Now, if I'm dealing with a major key that uses flats, the last flat is always the subdominant or scale degree 4. So if I take a look at this example with 2 flats, the last flat is E flat, and I know that is scale degree 4. So I count backwards from there to figure out what my tonic is going to be. Scale degree 4 is E flat, scale degree 3 would be D, there's a half step there. Scale degree 2 would be C. and then scale degree 1 would be B flat. 2 flats represents the key signature for B flat major. Going the other way, if I wanted to write the key signature for A flat major, I first find out what scale degree 4 is. So I count up A flat, B flat, C, D flat. That is going to be the note that corresponds to my last flat. I write my flats in order until I reach D flat. So B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. The key signature for A flat major contains 4 flats. Now you might have noticed there is a shortcut for figuring out the major keys that use flats. Instead of taking the last flat and saying that that's scale degree 4, we can take the second last flat and say that that is the keynote or tonic of the key. And then we simply write flats to the name of the key, and then write one more flat, and that will get us the correct key signature. So for example, if I take a look at this key signature with 5 flats, I find the second last flat, which is a D flat, and that will be my keynote. 5 flats represents D flat major. If I wanted to write the key signature for E flat major, I would start by writing my flats in order: B flat, E flat. I've reached the tonic or keynote, so I'm going to write one more flat, A flat. The key of E flat major contains 3 flats. That just leaves one more group of key signatures to figure out, and that's minor keys that use flats. In this case, the last flat is always the submediant or scale degree 6 in the key. So for example, I have a key signature here with 1 flat, B flat. That B flat represents the 6th scale degree. I can either count down from there, B flat to A, to G, to F, to E, to D, or I can count up, B flat, C, D, go up 3 notes, to find the keynote or tonic. 1 flat represents the key of D minor. If I know the name of the key, in this case C minor, what I would do first is figure out what the 6th scale degree in C minor is. It's going to be some variety of A, so I write my flats until I reach A. B flat, E flat, A flat. The key signature for C minor contains 3 flats. The third technique we're going to deal with is what I call the relative relationship. Now, I'm going to come out and say it, I hate this method, but it's very popular. My students use it all the time. But they also make a lot of mistakes using this technique. Now, it requires you to know either your major or your minor key signatures from memory, and that part I think is wonderful. It's based on the idea that relative keys share a key signature. So the 2 keys, the major key and the minor key that share a key signature, are a minor third apart. The major key is a minor third higher than its relative minor. So if I take this key signature, which represents A major, I can find, by going down a minor third, the relative minor for A major. It's going to share the same key signature. I could also think about it as finding the 6th scale degree in the key of A major. Works out being the same thing. So if A is my tonic, I go down to G sharp and go down one more to F sharp. A major and F sharp minor share a key signature of 3 sharps. I could also do it if I know my minor keys better than my major keys by starting with the minor key. So I have a key signature here for G sharp minor, and then I simply go up to the 3rd scale degree in G sharp minor, which will be the relative major, which will be G sharp, A sharp, B, B major. Now the problems with this technique are people inevitably know their majors better than their minors, and it seems that they never become fluent with their minor keys. When you ask a student who uses this technique what a minor key signature is, they have to go through this long thing of trying to figure out, okay, so I know that's D major, and then D major is relative to, and it just takes too long to do. You don't have time to do that in a rehearsal. Also, frequently, students will get the wrong answer by forgetting about the accidentals that show up in the key signature. So the example I just gave you, G sharp minor to B major, if we were to turn that around, what typically happens is a student would say, that's the key of B major. I need to find the relative, so we'll go down B, A, G. G minor is the relative of B major, so G minor must have 5 sharps. And if you were to play that on a piano, you would instantly know that G minor does not have 5 sharps. G minor has 2 flats. We forgot about the G sharp that is already in the key signature. So as long as you can keep those things in mind, it could work. But again, I'm not too thrilled with this technique. Let's go on to one that's a little bit better. The next technique is what I call the parallel relationship, and it works on a very similar principle to the relative relationship. Major and minor keys with the same keynote or tonic pitch are always separated by 3 accidentals. To go from major to minor, you either take away 3 sharps or you add 3 flats. So for example, if I start with A major, which has 3 sharps in the key signature, to find A minor, I take away 3 sharps. 3 sharps minus 3 sharps equals no sharps. So the key signature for A minor is no sharps or no flats. We could also do it by adding 3 flats to a flat key signature. So if I started out with E flat major and I wanted to find E flat minor, what I would do is add 3 flats to E flat major, which has 3 flats already. 3 flats plus 3 flats equals 6 flats. The key of E flat minor contains 6 flats. Now the problem with this technique comes is if you don't start with a key signature that has enough sharps to take away. So for example, if I were to start with the key signature of D major, I only have 2 sharps in the key of D major. I need to take away 3. So I take away those 2, and then I'm going to add 1 flat. So it's a change of 3 accidentals. I'm just mixing my sharps and flats. So the key signature for D major is 2 sharps, and the key signature for D minor, take away 2 sharps, add 1 flat, is 1 flat. A similar problem with this and the relative relationship method is that people never seem to gain fluency with their minor keys. They seem to be stuck on just memorizing their major keys and figuring out the minors from there, and I like to show a little love to the minor key. So that leads me to technique number 5, and this is my absolute favorite method. If you want to make me happy and your other music teachers happy, but it's all about me, then use this technique. It's pretty radical, so we'll see if you can handle this. Simply memorize them. There's only 30 of them. You might even pause the video at this point to write them down or take a screenshot. But with 7 accidentals available in the sharp range, 7 accidentals available in the flat range, and 2 keys that don't use any accidentals in their key signature, there's not that many of them to memorize. Fewer than the state capitals you had to memorize back in 4th grade. So do yourself a favor and just memorize them so you don't have to do any sort of figuring, any sort of calculus to figure out your key signature. You just know E flat minor has 6 flats. G major has 1 sharp. It should be that quick. That's what professional musicians can do, and if that's your goal, then start headed that way. Make flashcards, do what you need to do to memorize your key signatures. Now that we know how to read and write our key signatures, we're good to go, yes? Well, not quite. There's another issue that comes along with key signatures that we really need to pay attention to. If every key signature represents both a major and a minor key, how do we tell which one the music is using? The problem is actually deeper than that. A lot of music modulates or changes key without changing its key signature. So the takeaway from all of this is never completely trust a key signature. You always need to verify it by going to the music, either by reading it very closely or preferably by hearing it, singing it, or playing it on an instrument and letting your ear tell you what key you actually happen to be in. So if you don't have an instrument nearby to hear the piece that you're playing, then use this technique to try to figure out what key the piece actually happens to be in. The first thing I would check is the key signature. What that tells you is two likely possibilities about what key you happen to be in, one in major and one in minor. But keep in mind, those are only likely possibilities. The next thing I would check is the last note of the melody or the last chord. In most cases, that's going to be the tonic pitch or the tonic chord. Sometimes it won't be, and you might need to check that by listening to it. After that, I would check the first note or the first chord. The first note will usually be a member of the tonic triad, scale degrees 1, the tonic, scale degree 3, the mediant, or scale degree 5, the dominant. The starting chord is oftentimes a tonic chord or a dominant chord, but if it's one of those two things, it should be pretty easy to figure it out. Fourth, look for accidentals. Minor keys frequently use them to raise the leading tone to create a dominant sound. So if you're going through a piece of music with two flats and you see a lot of F sharps in there, that F sharp is most likely the leading tone in the key of G minor. Accidentals that happen frequently, consistently, can be added to the key signature. So if you're in a section of music that's modulated, but we haven't changed the key signature, we've added a flat to it, then you could add that accidental to the key signature that's written and figure out what key you're in from that. So in this video, we learned our order of sharps and flats. Fat cats go down alleys easily backwards, and B, E, A, D, G, C, F. Commit those to memory. Those will help you. We learned about the placement of sharps and flats on the staves. They always show up in the same order and the same configuration except for when you're using sharps on the tenor staff. We learned 5 techniques for reading and writing key signatures, deriving them from scales, using the last accidental, figuring out the relative relationship between major and minor, figuring out the parallel relationship between major and minor, the 3 accidental difference, and then my favorite, just memorizing all 30 of them, 15 majors, 15 minors. Finally, we learned to never trust a key signature. Always verify by looking at the final chord, final pitch, first chord and first pitch, and the accidentals in use throughout the passage. Preferably, we listen to the music and use our knowledge of what it should sound like to figure out what key we are actually in. Well, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and follow, and feel free to leave constructive comments below. Until the next Music Theory Bite, see you next time.